Hi, Amir.
Hi, Sandris. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. And today I will speak with composer from new music composer from Egypt, Amir Khalaf. Amir, can you give short introduction of yourself?
Yes, I'm an Egyptian composer based in Cairo. I consider myself a self-taught composer because I haven't had a proper musical education, academic musical education. So I've studied in fine arts in Cairo, and then I worked as a film composer for many years. And then I studied in Birmingham musical composition. I have a master's degree. And I participated in many festivals in Europe, like Impulse and Remusic in Russia, among others festivals. And I took master classes with composers like Kaya Sarayahu, Frank Bedrosian, and Raphael Sando, among others. Yeah, and that's it. Yeah, and now I'm a freelance composer. Yeah, and also I teach film music in the British University in Cairo. Yes.
Good. And Amir, what is the good musical composition for you?
Uh, for me, what's a good musical composition? Uh, Actually, it's a very hard question to answer, but I think when I'm listening to music, the first thing that I'm thinking about is um, how accurate and sharp the composer trying to express the ideas in the composition, and how genuine. I don't care about how smart and how skillful the composer is, but I think the most important thing, the accuracy and the sharpness of the expression of the ideas of the musical compositions. This is something very important to me, and also to another thing is to evoke all senses, not only the listening experience, but to evoke all senses that you can visualize the music, and you can and it must have some sort of tactile or tangible expression as well. This is something very important to me, to move your mind and your body at the same time, not only to be a passive listening experience. Yeah, I think this is, at least for me, the good music, or this is what I'm looking for when I'm listening to any kind of music.
Can you give some maybe example of some recent pieces which you have heard and which corresponds to those criteria?
Yes, is it from new music? Must be from new music, but because I was listening to a folk uh,
Your focus.
music, yeah, a new folk or avant-garde folk music band from, I think, Slovenia or from Eastern Europe, called Serum, or uh, they are a wonderful group. They are only three, and they play a kind of new folk music, very experimental. And I think they are very influenced by contemporary classic music, because there are some noisy stuff and some uh, techniques that borrowed, some extended techniques that borrowed from contemporary classic music. Uh, what else? I'm trying to. This is my recent listening experience. Uh, what else? Now I'm listening to nothing specific now. It's uh, yeah. I will tell you if I remember any music, but this is the most recent listening experience for me, because I'm interested in this kind of new folk approaches, and there are not too many, but
Yes.
I'm interested in. Yeah.
And maybe what is your musical ideas which you more frequently are uh, working on, or maybe in other words, maybe some musical signatures, right? Which you want to develop.
Yeah, yeah. You mean my aesthetics or my musical ideas
Yes,
when I
yes.
compose? Yes. Okay. I have, I think, two main things when I'm composing, when I always composing that I'm thinking of or working on. The idea of transforming motion into sound. This is
Hmm.
something always interests me. Uh, and I mean the physical motion on musical instruments or any sound sources. I like to experiment with this approach very much, uh, and with different kinds of motion. It can be circular or rectilinear or rotation, any kind of motion. I experiment a lot in musical instruments to generate different sonic environments out of these physical movements. And then I like to draw these sounds first, and make some sort of drawing or graphic, something in between graphic notations and traditional notations. Uh, and yes, so this is the first idea that's always interests me. Um, uh, also I like um, the static quality of, for example, the circular motion, like the circular bowing on strings, or circular breathing in woodwinds. I like this idea of static. It's a motion, but it's only works not linearly. It's a repetition of motion, like the circular bowing or circular breathing, among, of course, many examples. Um, yes, so this idea is always fascinating for me because um, the audience can listen or can hear something in between motion and sound.
Hmm.
Yeah, so this liminal space between motion and sound is something interesting for me. I'm also interested to explore temporal aspects in music, and I'm specifically interested in the process of decay, or the decay stage of any musical event or sounds. Um, I, I mainly focus on how sounds fade away and disintegrate in time, rather than focusing on how I initiate sounds or how I develop
Hmm.
musical events. Um, yeah, it's something like avoiding or neglecting the present
Yes.
uh, time of sounds or musical event, and only focusing on what comes after the sound. And simply, it's an influence from the phenomenon, like resonance and echo. This natural phenomena, and at the same time, it's a technological or thing, because you can add an effects like echo or reverb in sounds. So I'm interested in what comes after the sound, like the impact of reverb, or the accumulation patterns of echo. This is something I always try to transform it into acoustic uh, realm in my compositions.
Mhm.
So this is the mainly two important things for me when I'm composing.
Yes. And do you use traditional Western instruments, or do you use Egyptians or Arabic instruments?
No, it's mainly now I'm talking about Western European music, but also when I compose for folk music, um, I somehow apply this, because I'm the same composer, of course. So somehow I apply these ideas, but of course in different ways, because folk instruments, it's more difficult to compose for folk is Egyptian folk instruments. The instruments, at least that I'm familiar with, is a way difficult than composing for normal or Western musical instrument, because uh, it's the first thing that musicians, most of the musicians of folk Egyptian instruments don't read music, so so you have to rely on some improvisations,
Mhm.
and I don't like that because I like improvisations very much, but this is a problem in now in Egyptian folk music because the situation now is very static because you are repeating the same improvisations over and over again, something very old, and it still happens in the modern time now. So now I'm trying to find a way to graphically notate some ideas. Uh, I thought in the very beginning it will be very easy. No, it's not easy at all to notate a normal folk music, and it's not an avant-garde or experimental kind of folk music because I'm looking for to achieve some kind of Egyptian folk music, uh, uh, not to imitate new music or contemporary music and put it or transform it into this kind of just normal folk music. So I'm trying now to apply my ideas and in the same time to make a folk Egyptian folk music with Egyptian folk instruments. Also, there's another thing that the construction of folk instruments is very poor. You
Yes.
know, yeah, the intonation and everything. So it's a very fragile instrument in terms of physicality of them. So you have to be very careful when you are. For example, I play in an Egyptian woodwind. It it's very it's very prone to temperature and the humidity. So every day I have to find the true intonation. I have to tune them. So you have to take care of the instruments all the time. So it's very hard sometimes to keep going on or composing for these instruments. But now I'm working for a composition for Egyptian harp and Egyptian woodwind. Uh, yeah, and I think yeah, I record it myself because I play the instruments, but I will notate them to find musicians to play it also for me.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I'm still working on this
Mhm.
piece. Yeah.
And, what regarding about musical language? Do you use more, let's say, Western or European music serious or contemporary art music language, or more, let's say, Arabic language or folk, right? Egyptian folk language? In which language, or are you mixing somehow? It's or you
I, I,
working
I'm
with
using
this?
I'm using my personal language, if I could say that. That's what I'm trying to achieve. Is that I'm using my personal language. That, as I told you before, I'm the same composer that I'm working on both two different words. I know, but it's a music. You know, in the end, you are dealing with the musical instruments, you're dealing with sounds. Maybe it's different. Maybe it's more difficult as I told you, but I apply the same thing. Maybe the structure will be or the form, it will vary from uh, composing for folk instrument. For example, now the piece that I'm working on, um, it's not a fixed form. It will
Mhm.
neither will be an open form, but it I'm trying to make something that musicians can play easily and to be more practical and at the same time to be uh, to keep the aesthetics that I'm working on. So every musician will have uh, uh, different uh, temporality. It's like parallel temporalities. So every musician will just play in his or her tempo. In this case, will be, of course, two male musicians for Egyptian harp, and I don't think there's there are any female musicians play Egyptian harp or Egyptian woodwind. Yeah, so every musician will have his own temporal um, feel.
Yes.
Yeah, so I will write the tempo for all thing, but I will leave them just play for for just for how they feel about the tempo. It would be a free kind of a free tempo for them.
Got it. If you would were a female, would your music would be different or not?
Me?
Yes. If you would be a
No,
female, would
no
your
at
music
all. No, no at all. Because actually, this is nice. Actually, most of I'm very influenced by many female composers more than male composers now, especially now, and I think female composers contributed a lot to now to contemporary music, and yeah, yeah, there are a lot of female composers that makes me love contemporary music. Yeah, no, no, I'll be the same human being. Yeah, I think if you ask any female composer if you are what if you are now a male composer and compose, I think they will answer the same question. Yeah.
Yes. Uh, what is your way of composing? How you start and which stage you should go through, right?
uh, yeah, the first uh, thing is sound. I work on sound and motion. Of course, sorry. I work in motion and sound. This is the first thing I'm working on to experiment with sound, um, with extended techniques to generate new sounds. Uh, because I'm mainly now talking about acoustic
Mhm.
kind of composition. So, and I would like to say something about my approach to the extended techniques, because I don't use extended techniques just for the sake of having new sounds.
Mhm.
I'd rather interested in extended techniques because it allows me to explore the limitedness of musical instruments and not the other way around. I know it's called extended to extend the sonic possibilities, but I'm really interested in the concept of limitedness of the musical instruments. I like to explore the weak points and expressive uh, uh, points in musical instruments. So that's why I'm using extended techniques. I'm talking about some techniques like bitones and strings and harmonics, these kind of fragile sounds, and also fragile parts in musical instruments like behind the bridge, and this kind of very vulnerable parts and vulnerable sounds in the same time. And then I made sometimes I record my improvisation or experiments in in the musical instruments, if I can do that, if it's a piano or string quartet, or I can record it, and then as I told you, I transcribe everything. Of course, I organize the form and organize everything. I work on this kind of parallel motions and parallel temporalities to
Mhm.
make to juxtapose different soundscapes together, and I edit a lot. It takes me I edit a lot because you before composing or organizing the form, you are experimenting with everything, and you make everything that's possible from this instrument, and then you edit uh, and you get rid of redundant stuff, and then transcribe all what I have done, and I'm interested also to draw the sounds, the visual aspect, or the visual communication with the musicians is something very important to me. And actually, to see my music in front of me in form of drawings. This is something I'm really interested in. Yeah, and that's it. Yeah,
Yes, yes.
yeah.
And how your music changed in the last 10 years?
Uh, I don't think it changed a lot. The same. If you mean in terms of idea, it's the same ideas. Uh, um, I know it sounds quite boring, but it's the same idea from from the very beginning when I compose. Even when I compose for film music or compose different other musical genres. I always have been concentrated on the idea of motion and the process of decay and this kind of aesthetics that I have. But of course, it was very naive in the beginning,
Mhm.
and it wasn't that clear right now. It's still actually I'm still exploring, of course. I didn't reach anything in my opinion, about my music, but now it's more refined and more more expressed than before.
Mhm, mhm.
And the result is totally different than 10 years ago, of course. It's not better. I'm not saying that, but maybe it's more clear, for at least for me. Yeah,
Yes, yes.
it's more clear. Yeah.
And
So
what kind of software or hardware are you using in process of composing?
I'm using notational software Finale, and I use Logic. Um, Sometimes I use Max MSP but this is when when I compose for electronics, uh, and I like more hardware stuff than software, like analog synthesizers, Eurorack modules. I'm not a Eurorack module artist, of course, but I'm really interested more in hardware based electronic music than the software. So I'm just using Finale and Logic for
Yes,
for making my music now.
yes, yes. And do you extend your music visually as well or not? Do you?
Do you mean in multimedia
Yes,
stuff? No, at all, because as I told you, I'm already visualized my music into
of course.
my notation. Yeah, into scores. For me, the score is the visual aspect. Of course, the audience don't see the score, but uh, maybe eventually I'll do that. But now I'm not interested because I like at this point at least I like the listener or the audience to imagine or visualize the music on their own rather than to give them something to watch. And I think maybe if I do that, it would be out of necessity, maybe, or it would be an aesthetical uh, aspect in the composition. Yeah.
Right. And what do you fear as composers the most?
uh, I think it's the same thing, same answer like when you ask me about what's a good composition for you. You can the opposite. It will be the opposite. That uh, the most thing I fear is to lose this accuracy or sharpness when I trying to express myself and my ideas in music within music, and also to not to not fully expressing my ideas and myself into music. This is the most fearful thing for me.
Mhm.
uh, I think this is to be lazy, to not able or capable to express exactly what you want. This is the most awful things for any composer, I think. Yeah.
And now I will ask a question of Francois Charan. I asked to most, or mainly, I think, to all, to all to whom I make interviews. Why do you still compose, right?
Yeah. Okay. uh, uh, I always think about that uh, every day when I think about why I'm still composing and why, and the other way around, why I didn't stop composing, because I thought about that a lot to just stop composing. I'm not, you know, I don't have any I don't have any more ideas to say, but simply because I still have something to say and I still want to. I feel that I didn't uh, accurately expressed my ideas till now. So I think when I don't know, it's something that you can't achieve, of course, fully achieved
Yes.
to express fully yourself and completely your ideas, but um, simply that I feel that I still have something to say and I still have some ideas to express. This is
Got it.
why I'm composing now. Yes.
Got it. Got it. And
Mhm.
no, maybe not about your musical language, right? But let's say, what is the biggest changes, right, in musical landscape in Egypt during this century, right? How it changed?
Oh, uh, in Egypt, I think. Uh, Considering we don't have a new music scene in Egypt, but maybe I can talk about pop music. Yeah, because now we have some changed in the last 10 years. Uh, the electro shabi music now we have a lot of electro shabi music, a lot of hip hop and trap stuff. Um, but regarding folk music or especially folk music, nothing happened, nothing changed. We are still at the same place of
Yes.
folk music, and I hope this will change eventually. I have hope for that because I'm really interested to uh, to um, to make this music develop more because it deserves a lot. Folk Egyptian instruments are very rich and uh, they are very difficult. As I told you, that's why it doesn't or didn't change a lot. But I hope there are some composers from new generation who will work on that. Yeah.
And you said that there is no new music scene, right? In Egypt. What do you mean? There are no composers except you, or
No, no, no. There are, but I
nation,
mean,
no educational programs?
no, there's no contemporary music, classic music scene to be more specific. We have a lot of new music, of course, but I mean contemporary classic music. We don't have a contemporary classic music scene, but we have a lot of good composers, of course. But mm, yeah, they don't work.
Are they mostly like performing here in Cairo in Egypt, or they going abroad, right?
They're going abroad. The same thing. They're going. So I know a lot of very, very good musicians who settled in Qatar and Dubai because they can play in the Philharmonic Orchestra in Qatar, for example, or in Dubai. We have Cairo Philharmonic Orchestra. They are really good, but it's not active, of course, like Europe. Uh, we have s- a few composers, not as far as I know. I don't know, but we have a few composers who is going abroad, and some of them they can teach here in Egypt, and others uh, live abroad and or going back and forth like me.
Yes.
So we have good film composers, mm,
Yes.
but few few contemporary classic composers as
Yeah.
much as I know. Yeah.
Yes, there is no, and do you have some educational programs where, for example, where
Yes. Yes. Well.
people can learn how to compose new
Yes. Yes.
contemporary?
We have yeah, Cairo Conservatoire in Egypt. Yes. And we have another. I think in the American University they have a music department. I'm not sure if they have a composition department or not, but in the conservatoire, I'm pretty sure that they have composition department. Yes.
Yes, yes,
Mm.
yes, and they more like taught Arabic music or
No, no,
Western
no.
Arabic music.
Both actually. But in the Cairo Conservatoire, they teach Western composition. Yeah. And yes, and we have another college for musical education. They
Yes.
they teach there, and we have institution, of course, for traditional Arabic music. It's very old and very, and we have another musical education course or college. I mean, they teach there Arabic music, and I think they also teach Western music. They
Hmm.
teach both. Yes.
Are there are happening new music concerts in Cairo?
Uh, no, I don't think so. No, in the last uh, 4 or 5 years, maybe in the American University, but I'm not sure about that. Maybe some few concerts there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's mostly like there are programs, right? And then the composers, so they're going to study abroad or coming back, but they're performing mostly in abroad, right?
Yes.
In abroad festivals, right?
Yes. 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 This
There is
is
no local scene of music, right? There is some
yes.
educational scene, but
Yes. It we don't have a local contemporary classic music scene here. Mm.
why so? What could be reason to your mind?
Of course, it's economical reason. I think so, and um, I don't think that anyone here are or is interested in contemporary classic music. Just a few people. uh, Maybe I don't know, but maybe we are not there yet. Maybe we need
Yes.
to have some time to get there, but. We have an opera house and a very good philharmonic orchestra, uh, but they play some old stuff. They don't play contemporary stuff. Uh, I'm not sure, but maybe it's an economical reason and cultural reason actually, because uh, you know people here in Egypt are more interested in. Um, I don't want to say that. No, it's the very stereotyping, but maybe it will. Maybe we'll get there someday. Yeah, yeah. I hope so actually, because uh, I think if we have some Egyptian composers who are interested in contemporary classic music, it would be very good for the music scene in Egypt.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. And what do you think? What are trends in abroad? Right? What's going on in contemporary new music? Not in Egypt, but right abroad.
About do you mean the changes that happened?
Yes, yes. In most maybe in Middle East, right? More in Middle East. What you said, Bahrain region, maybe Iran
Yeah,
or
I'm not following the scene in the Middle East because, of course, I know some good composers from Iran and Turkey. Uh, I'm not sure about the other countries. I'm not following the scene in the Middle East. Yes, only in Europe and Asia, maybe South America. Yeah, because I meet them in festivals or in academies
Well,
in Europe.
okay,
But I have no idea about what's happening in Iran
okay. And
for example.
to your mind, what's going on in new music in Europe, right? How it's changing now?
Yeah, I think it changed uh, a lot more than maybe 10 or 20 years ago. Uh, the scene now, we have a lot of interdisciplinary approaches, for example, a lot of multimedia uh, methods in composition, um, more individualistic approaches than before, of course, than 20 years or 30 years before. Maybe the last clear movement of contemporary music was the saturation, and it wasn't that it wasn't a movement, or it was like an attitude, yeah, from Frank Bedrosian and Raphael Sando. And after that, I think it's more random and individual approaches into contemporary music. What else? More composers and from outside Europe, and this is something very interesting to a lot of Asian and South American composers. Turkish, Iranian, of course. Uh, South African sometimes, and not sure about the other countries. Yeah, I think this is a change, a new treatment for folk music or folk instruments, like a lot of Asian composers do now. And this is something very positive for me, actually. Uh, yeah, and a lot of electronic stuff, of course. Yeah.
And the last question: what is, to your mind, what is a new music role in society?
Role, the new music role in society. Uh, yeah, I think, or I believe that it provides knowledge for people, and I mean knowledge here in a broader sense, not only intellectually, or not only the intellectual knowledge. I mean spiritual, emotional, and scientific sometimes knowledge. And this is important, very important to me, that and I hope that Egypt will be more developed in this uh, uh, genre, or this new kind contemporary classic music, because I believe that new music, and what the most interests me in the new music, that this kind of sometimes temporal knowledge, if you can say that, if I can say that, is that you get exposed to different temporal perceptions and temporal treatments of composers. It's something very important to me, because I'm really interested in temporal expressions. So yes, I think knowledge is the only role of not only, but the most important role for new music and the society.
Okay,
And of course, the enjoyment of or the experience of having collectively to go on to concerts and listen to music is something very, very important. The enjoyment of the process, or the experience. Yes.
thank you very much,
Yes.
Nomir.
Thank you. Thank you to you, Sanders. Yeah. Okay.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.